Hello, my name is Jason Oldford, and today I'm here to talk to you about executive functioning, planning, and organization, and how they've applied to me in my life. First though, let's take a look at what executive functioning is. Executive functioning is a term that is widely used in autism circles to describe a broad array of skills that have to do with individuals' cognitive function. Not all autistics have cognitive impairments, but I do. Critical thinking has never been my forte, but there are some autistics who are really good at it, and I think my critical thinking skills are the reason why I struggled in science subjects in school. Some sources say that up to 80% of those with autism suffer from executive function disorder, leading to difficulties with things such as managing time and completing tasks. I don't consider myself as someone who suffers from executive function disorder. I consider myself to be a very good time manager. As my grandfather once said, you plan your work, and then you work your plan. And I do that very well. However, I don't cope well with interruptions. When I start a task, I like to finish it before moving on to something else. In my line of work, interruptions are part of the job. And while I don't handle them well, I always handle them like the consummate professional that people say I am. So while things like this can pose a problem for some autistics, for me they don't, more often than not. I could go on with discussing my ups and downs with executive functioning, but I only have so much time. Let's talk about planning now. The technical definition of executive function is the cognitive processes that help us regulate, control, and manage our thoughts and actions. It includes planning, working memory, attention, problem solving, verbal reasoning, inhibition, cognitive flexibility, initiation of actions, and monitoring of actions. Planning is the ability to forward think and choose the necessary actions to reach a goal, decide the right order, assign each task to the proper cognitive resources, and establish a plan of action. Those on the spectrum can have difficulty formulating plans to get through their days and organize tasks into completable sections. For me, a typical day starts with logging on and knowing where I left off the previous day so I can finish it. However, sometimes when I check my email, I see that a rush job has been assigned to me. So I have to do that first, and it knocks me off my routine, and sometimes it's hard to get back into it. I'm often left asking, where was I? And finding it tough to find where I was. I get there eventually, though. One area where I find I struggle is problem solving. For example, I could get up in the morning and find that my computer isn't working, and I can't work. And the problem's on my end. The easy solution would be to get a technician to my home as soon as possible, regardless of the cost. At least the problem would get solved, and I'd be back in business. But I don't often consider that there were other, cheaper solutions. Same goes if, for example, an appliance breaks down. Easy solution would be to call for repairs. But it may not always be the best one. Someone I know might have been able to fix it and save me a lot of money. So let's just say I don't always use common sense when I have to solve a problem. When it comes to working memory, well, I have a great memory for facts and figures. I could look at a Billboard pop chart from any given year for a few seconds and recite it from memory. But my short-term memory isn't always the best. For example, I could watch a TV show or a movie and not remember what happened or what was said a few minutes after the fact. Same thing goes when I'm in a meeting. I might not retain something that was said. When I was in school, I often dozed off or tuned out because I had no interest in what was being taught me. But that aside, I could remember something that happened, say, 10 years ago, but not something that happened 10 minutes ago. When I do online trainings, I have to take notes, because if I don't, I won't remember anything by the time doing the final quiz rolls around. People on the spectrum are very focused at what they do. When they start a task, they're into it. They drown in it, they're immersed in it. I do get immersed in my work, but I live on a street where a lot of emergency vehicles drive by. Police cruisers, ambulances, fire trucks, you get the picture. The sirens often cause me to cringe and take me off my game. Same thing goes with lawnmowers in the summer and snowblowers in the winter. The good news, though, is once the noise dies down, I can refocus on what I was doing, and it doesn't take me long. Now let's take a look at why executive functioning is so tough on people on the spectrum. Autism spectrum disorder is characterized by certain personal abilities and deficits. Most, though not all people with autism, are great at seeing details clearly, but have a hard time seeing a big picture and understanding which details are most relevant to that big picture. For example, I could read somewhere that a profitable corporation announced layoffs, and I could do some reading and think, gee, given the profits they made last quarter or last year, laying people off should be the last thing they're doing. That may be true, but this is a case of not looking at the big picture. In other words, there's more to it than that. They're good at following schedules and routines, but they have a difficult time flexibly changing those schedules or routines. We touched on this. Once I get into a routine, I like to stick to it. I don't like interruptions. Sadly, some autistics get upset or even angry when this happens. I heard a story where an autistic employee arrived for work one day. His boss told him about changes in his schedule. The employee flew off the handle and was fired on the spot. Unfortunately, things like this do happen. Can understand and follow rules, but get upset when they're broken or bent. I'm one of those by-the-book types. I'm currently serving as a group commissioner in a scouting group. It's my responsibility to make sure of such things as whether our volunteers and our youth are properly registered. I've learned not to get upset with people if, for example, they don't complete the trainings on time. But for some autistics, this isn't always easy. They have no tolerance for disobedience, or perhaps don't understand that it's not a case of simple disregard. It's a case of just being busy and not having gotten around to it. For example, it's kind of where the theory of mind concept comes into play. Inability to see things from the other person's side. May have difficulty in sustaining focus and motivation when engaged in something that isn't intrinsically interesting to them. We've also touched on this. When I was in school, if I wasn't interested in something, I'd just tune out. I may have been giving the teacher my undivided attention, but I was like Teflon. Nothing stuck to me. I have a hard time switching from one activity to the next. This is also known as multitasking, and I have to do it every day. If I'm translating a document, let's say, then I have to respond to an email that requires my immediate attention, and then after that I have to help a coworker. That situation can be distressing to me. I like to do one thing at a time, do it well, finish it, and move on. Can work with concrete objects and expectations more readily than with abstract ideas. Let's face it, the abstract just doesn't fit in well with me. When I was in school, in addition to struggling with science, I also struggled with literature. Don't get me wrong, I do like to read for enjoyment, but I struggled with things like novels, poems, and plays. In school, answering questions such as, what does this line mean? And not doing well in exercises like, place these events in the order in which they happened. However, that's more taking us back to the short-term memory subject we discussed earlier. Even at work, sometimes when I translate a document, I have trouble interpreting the meaning in the source text. I have to be able to translate it literally or almost literally. But translation is about conveying messages. And although I sometimes do it well, it's a struggle for me. As Ringo Starr would say, it don't come easy. Have difficulty with theory of mind. Understanding that others do not know, share, feel, or understand what's inside your own mind. We touched on this earlier. I have trouble seeing things from somebody else's perspective. But conversely, they also have trouble seeing things from mine. Sometimes I have to express my displeasure with a situation, or even call someone out. And all they think is I'm being rude or uncaring. Not so. I'm just being myself. And although I admit that this component needs work, it's part of what I am. Looking at this list, you'll probably notice that most of these qualities are in direct conflict with the qualities required for good executive functioning. If you don't see the big picture, are not a flexible problem solver, and have poor people skills, you're unlikely to be a good project manager. You'll also have a hard time planning for and executing multiple steps at the same time, especially if those steps are abstract, thinking about time as opposed to building a model. I work with a lot of project managers, and believe me when I tell you, their jobs aren't easy. However, some autistics have very good organizational skills and would excel in project management. While some people with autism will never have good executive functioning skills, they can still build them and work around the need for them. In some cases, making it possible to manage complex situations without much difficulty. Now let's look at executive functioning difficulties. Many individuals with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, have great memories with facts and details, but they have trouble organizing their thoughts and accessing and integrating the information they have to make it useful for them. This is called executive functioning, or EF difficulty. Executive function can be considered the epicenter of the brain. It controls the integration of cognitive processes such as planning and prioritizing, accessing working memory, directing attention, problem solving, verbal reasoning, inhibiting extraneous ideas, mental flexibility or shifting thoughts, multitasking, time management, and initiating and monitoring one's actions, also called metacognition. Together, these skills allow all individuals to solve problems, organize a plan of action, and control emotions and behaviors throughout the day. After mentioning all these things that executive functioning controls, I kind of feel that the part of my brain that controls it isn't even there. Now let's look at organizational skills. People with autism have trouble with organizational skills regardless of their intelligence and/or their age. Even a straight-A student with autism who has a photographic memory can be incapable of remembering to bring a pencil to class or of remembering a deadline for an assignment. In such cases, aid should be provided in the least restrictive way possible. Strategies could include having the student get a picture of a pencil on the cover of his notebook, or maintaining a list of assignments to be completed at home. Always praise the student when he remembers something he has previously forgotten. Never denigrate or harp at him when he fails. A lecture on the subject will not only not help, it will often make the problem worse. He may begin to believe he cannot remember to do or bring these things. While I agree that this is true, when I was in school, from junior high to university, I remembered what my schedule was and what I had to bring to class. Yes, there were times when I forgot, but they were few and far between. I don't think I ever needed the aid I just mentioned. Getting back to my school days, I was disorganized. I often had the messiest desk in the class and often misplaced papers. In some cases, they were handouts I had to do with assignments, or worse, notes that I had to bring home to my parents. This was especially the case in elementary school. In time, though, my organizational skills improved. So in junior high, I still had to put papers in my desk, but because teachers were stricter then, I was careful not to lose them. In high school, I had a locker that I shared with another student. The lockers had two shelves, one for my books, one for my partner's, so that was a help. Now let's fast forward to the later years of my life. As I go through this part, you will see how organized I've become over the years. From 1996 to 2007, I was involved in Toastmasters. For part of that time, I was a VP Education. In a Toastmasters club, the VP Education is the one who schedules the meetings, plans the speeches, assigns the roles. You get the picture. It involves a lot of organization, and it was a job I excelled at. I've also been a secretary in many capacities. In a Toastmasters club, on my condo board, on the deacon's board at my church, I can go on. Being a secretary, of course, involves record keeping and taking minutes, and my memory is a great help with the latter. It's not often that there are errors or omissions when I take minutes. Today, I serve as a group commissioner in a scouting group. While I never thought I had the capacity to be a leader, things are going well so far. There are times when I have to get after people to get things done. The thing to be careful of is to do it professionally and inoffensively. So you've heard of my pluses and minuses with executive functioning, planning, and organization. So I'll conclude with what can be done to improve the EF skills of a person on the spectrum. Assistive technology can include checklists, to-do lists, even alarms set in smartphones. A person on the spectrum has difficulty with verbal overload. Putting things in writing, that is, what and when a task must be completed or when an activity is scheduled, will help. In university, it would help so a student doesn't miss a lecture or a tutorial. In the workplace, it would help so that an employee doesn't miss a meeting or a call. Students may benefit from sitting closer to the teacher. Employees may benefit from working out of the main flow of traffic, where distractions are minimal. When faced with a large project, either in school or at work, individuals can benefit from having the project broken down into manageable pieces so that the project doesn't feel so overwhelming. The project can be completed one piece at a time. Some individuals benefit from intermediate deadlines. For example, instead of making a large assignment due in a month, the first part can be due in a week, the second in 2 weeks, and so on, until the project is completed. In fact, with help, many individuals can learn to do this for themselves. Executive functioning strategies and accommodations can be included in individualized education programs, or IEPs, and 504 plans. As in any situation, the IEP or 504 plan needs to address the individual's deficits and incorporate the strategies and goals that will specifically work for that particular student. They may also be provided as an employment accommodation. So in a nutshell, what I would advise people who are dealing with autistic individuals with executive functioning problems is to find out areas where they're strong and where they struggle, and use the suggestions above to turn the weaknesses into strengths. It can be done.